everybody. Welcome to Know Your Money. I'm Bronwyn Weiner.
And I'm Craig Finch, and we are from Growth Financial Planning. We hope you enjoy our podcast.
Hello, everybody. We have Melody from Bidvest here for the last of our Bidvest series. And one of the topics we're going to discuss today is event-based cover. So this is specific events like housewives are generally not covered, or sometimes students or sports people. And Bidvest has come up with a way of actually helping insuring those people. So thank you for being here, Melody.
Thank you for
the whole series.
For having me again.
Yes,
I've really been enjoying having this discussion with you guys. Event-based cover is a really exciting topic to discuss because this is something that really sets us apart from the rest of the industry. We did a bit of a study in 2015 from an underwriting perspective. We've been doing income protection for 20 years at that stage. We've underwritten a whole lot of people. And so the question was asked from an underwriting perspective, who's not getting cover and why aren't they getting cover? And what we found at that stage is there were about 250 different occupations where we weren't giving the people cover. The two reasons why they weren't getting cover is either because the job they perform is very high risk. So there's a very high chance of them getting injured on the job. And so most insurers look at those people and go, oh, no, we don't want to, because there's too high a risk of them dipping into the risk pool. The second group of people is people, the job itself is not high risk, but they're very sensitive to claims. So the slightest thing that happens to them potentially means they can't do their job for a long period of time, or quite often can't do their job, meaning they're going to be in claim quite often. And so they don't get cover. An example of that would be, let's say, a singer. It's not particularly risky being a singer, but if I'm singing many hours a day and I'm doing concerts and all of that, I can get laryngitis. Laryngitis is not particularly serious, but if I've got laryngitis or I've got bronchitis, flu, anything like that, obviously I can't do my job. And so I am occupationally disabled. But I could potentially have laryngitis every single month, so the chance of that person claiming on their policy is incredibly high. And insurance companies go, that's a little bit too much of a risk for us, so they don't get cover. So having this list of people, we thought, well, what does the rest of the industry do, and how can we fix this? Because we really do believe that every hardworking South African should be able to protect their income, because at the end of the day, we all have exactly the same need, and that's to put food on the table for our families. So we looked in the industry, and what we found was most of those occupations would only get functional impairment cover. That meant the client had to be permanently functionally impaired in order to get cover. So I can never use my arm again. I've completely lost my leg. I've completely lost my sight, or that sort of thing. For those who were lucky enough to get a temporary income benefit, it typically came with a really long waiting period of 3 to 6 months. And we spoke in the previous episode about the risks of having such a long waiting period. Although it is more affordable, it essentially means that you can't claim for the most common things that people would claim for. So knowing that, we thought, okay, if that's the big problem, they can't get cover because they're high risk, they're sensitive to claim, and the cover they're getting in the industry, in the market, is like really not actually doing anything for them. How can we fix that? And that's where we came up with our event-based cover. Now, in a previous episode, I spoke to you about our fast-track events, where I said we looked at all the claims we'd ever paid, and we actually started that study specifically with event-based cover in mind. What solution can we come up with? So we found that there are these 209 things that people claim for year in and year out. They're very common. And so from that concept, event-based cover was born. And although our fast-track events apply to our comprehensive clients and our event-based cover, it really was created for the event-based client. And so essentially what it says is, where all other income protection benefits require a client to be occupationally disabled in order to claim, Event-based cover says, here's a specific list of events that you qualify for your specific job, taking into consideration the risks involved with your job. And all you need to do is prove that one of these events have happened to you. So like I mentioned earlier on, that can be an x-ray, it can be a sick note from a doctor, could be a surgical report.
Can you do a practical example of like a housewife now?
Okay, so we can look at a housewife. So like we said earlier on with the student as well, it seems counterintuitive to give income protection to someone who's not earning an income. But there was an article written a number of years ago that asked the question, what would the financial impact be on a family if the homemaker wasn't there for whatever reason? And it can be as much as 50,000 Rand a month, because now it's transport for the kids to school and aftercare and someone to clean the house and do the cooking and all that sort of stuff. So very important to protect that homemaker. When you want an example, are you wanting specific days and amounts? Or?
So just like, for example, that you were saying there's a list that a housewife needs to, would they be covered for everything? So
a housewife is an example. Obviously, there's not a big risk in being a housewife. So the housewife is an example of an occupation that would qualify for the full list of 209 events. So if she falls down the stairs and breaks her leg, goes to the hospital, has an x-ray, puts it in a cast, she sends us her claim form with that x-ray, and we will pay her for a certain amount of days depending on the specific event. An example would be if she's gone, say, for an ACL reconstruction. She fell down the stairs and she tore her ACL and she goes for ACL reconstruction. She would get a payout guaranteed for 60 days at 100% of whatever her cover amount was.
And then is that capped? Is a housewife capped at a certain amount?
The housewife's cover is based on what the breadwinner's income is. And that's capped at 50,000 Rand is the maximum they can be covered for.
And this is for income protection?
Income protection. Amazing. So that housewife can have temporary income cover, extended income cover, critical illness income that we've spoken about. She can go and add the future cover protector to all of those. She can have lump sum critical illness, disability, life cover, life income. It's a full suite of benefits
because
that
often,
housewife can have.
Housewives feel, or even house husbands, they feel as though they don't earn anything because they're not getting that salary. But like you've just said, they are.
Absolutely.
What they are doing costs a lot of other things, and it's not fair that they're not always covered. So it's one of the best things.
Yeah, because I mean, what are the choices? If that homemaker's not there to take kids to school, do the washing, do the food, whatever, it's either the breadwinner has to come home, and that's going to have a financial impact because now they're not earning a salary or they're on unpaid leave or whatever that might be, or they have to fork out money to other people to do that job. So absolutely there's a need for that homemaker to be covered. But along with that, now you've got people who work in occupations that are very high risk, where the chance of them getting injured.
Of one of those.
So
a machinist.
Being South African and we all love rugby, let's use a rugby player as an example. We've got quite a number of rugby players on our books. Now, no other insurer will give them temporary income protection because we know the moment that they step on that field, there's a chance that they're going to break something, tear something, concuss, whatever the case may be. So most insurers look at that and go, that's too much of a risk, we don't want to touch you. But it's not just rugby injuries that they're at risk at. There are tons of other things that could happen to them. They could also get cancer. They can also have their appendix taken out. They can also get COVID. They can be in a car accident. So by saying, I'm not giving you cover because your occupation is risky, you're excluding them from hundreds of other things that could potentially happen to them. So we give a rugby player event-based cover. They're covered for temporary income for 2 years. They've got extended income benefits up until retirement age. And again, like I said in a previous episode, we don't require them to be permanently disabled in order to claim.
And they have critical
They
illness
can have critical
income.
illness income, lump sums, life cover, the whole suite of benefits. The only difference between that rugby player and the homemaker is the amount of the events that they qualify for. So
that broken leg down the stairs
would have been
thing.
different for them. So the homemaker has got the 209 events. She's had ACL reconstruction. She gets 60 days guaranteed at 100% of cover. The rugby player, on the other hand, we know he's at risk of injuring a knee at some point. So his list of events looks slightly different. He's only got access to 138 events instead of 209 because we've excluded certain events that we know
Are going to happen.
he's specifically at risk for. But that being said, just because that event's been removed doesn't mean there's no claim. It just means we're going to look at the claim through a slightly different lens. So I'll give you a real example. We have a client on our books. He used to play for the Stormers, and his cover started on the Friday. The very next day, he went on the field and he injured his ACL.
What's his name?
I'll tell you later.
Yeah, okay.
He injured his ACL. He had to go for ACL reconstruction. Now, on his specific list of events, if you go and look there, you won't find ACL reconstruction because it's been excluded because he's at high risk. The homemaker got 60 days. On his list, however, there's a little catch-all definition that says, surgical procedures not elsewhere defined on your list. Did he go for surgery? Yes, he did. So we paid him 100% of his cover amount for 14 days, purely because he went for surgery. Then thereafter, we assess the claim based on temporary impairment. And again, we've got a defined list of impairments: hospitalization, mobility, loss of use of limb, vision, hearing, all sorts of things. So for him specifically, once he came out of hospital, he had to be on crutches for, I can't remember.
Like
it was
6 months.
Yeah, it was quite a few months that he had to be on crutches. So there we paid him a portion of his income for as long as he was on crutches. When he came off the crutches, he couldn't just run straight onto the field. He had to go for rehab, have physio. So for as long as he was in physio, we paid him a portion of his income for that duration. So in total, I think we paid him for something like 129 days, where elsewhere in the industry, he would not have had cover,
Any cover at all.
Any
Brilliant.
cover at all. Should something else happen to him, like having his tonsils taken out, or he gets
Accidents
cancer or whatever, he still
He's at
has the
least
cover
covered.
for all of those things, because that's got nothing to do with the fact that he's a rugby player.
I think a big market for you to look at is based on how well the Springboks are playing against opposition. You should start insuring the opposition because they need it.
That's not a bad idea.
Does this cover all sports?
So
Tennis coaches, golf coaches, paddle, all that?
Yeah, we've got...
Because traditionally you couldn't cover those people.
Yeah, and the reason you couldn't cover them is obviously because of the risk of getting injury, or because of... there's a third type of person. So there's the high risk, there's the ones that are sensitive to claim, and then you've got people who've got a very variable income. So the income I get is very different from month to month. And again, insurers look at that and go, it's too much of a risk. We don't know if you're going to pay your premiums. If you don't know where your next paycheck comes from, you might accidentally fall down the stairs so that you can claim. So that's a bit of a risk. And so those types of occupations we also stick into
Can you give an
event-based cover.
example? Sorry, it's just easier.
So an example, in my past life, before I was a financial advisor, I used to work in the theatre industry with actors and singers and dancers, that sort of thing. I had no full-time work. I was a lecturer for part of the day, and then I was a sports coach for the afternoons, and then in the evenings I worked at the theatre on a show that was running for 2 weeks. Next month there might not be a show. So it just depended on what I was doing, but I typically had income coming from 3, 4, 5, 6 different sources month to month. But my income did this. And so no insurance company would have given me cover. I couldn't get vehicle finance. I couldn't get a home loan.
But now Bidvest will cover that.
So yes, someone who has a fluctuating income, even though they have an occupation that's not necessarily high risk, it could be someone with a low risk occupation, but because of the nature of how they're working and that variable income, we could put them on event-based cover where another insurer might not offer them cover at all.
Sorry, so let's say you have a housewife and she plays rugby on the weekends as a hobby.
That's a hobby. So
how does that
hobbies we don't, unless it's a hobby like you are jumping out of an aeroplane or you're doing deep sea diving or motocross, those sorts of hobbies, you'll have an exclusion
And
on your
that's even
policy.
on normal policies.
On normal
so
policies, yeah.
yeah.
So across the board, that's
You
industry
have a
standard.
hazardous pursuit.
Yeah, but that's not. I
question.
mean, so she plays rugby on the weekends. That's not extreme. It's
So that's not a
That's-
specific thing that we would exclude. So that's not extreme. If she gets injured,
because I mean, soccer players can get easily injured.
Yeah.
People
But
playing
she's a
soccer on the
skydiver.
weekend.
if she's
Yeah.
a skydiver and she gets hurt while she's skydiving, then we're not going to pay for the claim because that's a hazardous pursuit.
If she gets hurt while skydiving, she's probably not around, is she?
Well, you know.
most-
Oh, look at
No.
Calvin. You don't know.
Most claims,
Paragliding.
Same thing. Close enough.
I don't know.
Still in the sky.
Dropping from 10,000 feet.
I think most insurers will cover skydiving in death, but not disability.
Yeah. Yeah. So if the question is what happens if you survive. So event-based cover was designed for those people who couldn't get cover because of the nature of their occupation and because there was nothing else in the industry for them. So we wanted to make sure that they're taken care of, but we've done it in a way where we as the insurer are also protected. And we've now been able to pivot that product and now also start using it for people who don't get cover because of their health. So we now offer our event-based cover to clients who suffer from bipolar mood disorder. You'll know in the industry, anyone who's
Mental.
bipolar, no cover
No
at all.
cover.
If you've got depression or anxiety, you can get cover, but with a psychological exclusion. Bipolar, no, you don't get cover. With us, we are able to put them on event-based cover. They'll have one or two, I think there's 5 events that are excluded from the list of 209, and that's got to do with
Mental
stuff.
stuff.
Being in a mental health facility or, cognitive impairment, that sort of thing. But outside of that, they covered for everything else that could potentially happen to them in life. And I think that's quite unique to us in the market. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's amazing
Wonderful.
news. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you
Yep.
for your time. I hope your viewers and your listeners have learned something.
I'm sure we
and
have.
we've really,
Thanks.
really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much.
Melody, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, would like to subscribe, please visit our website www.growthfp.co.za. The information we have provided in this podcast is our personal opinion. For more detailed information, please discuss your financial situation with a financial planner.